In this video, we'll take a look at integrating the Sophos XG Firewall with Microsoft Active Directory Server. We'll also understand how to import the user groups and enforce the firewall policies on the user groups in the directory server. XG can be integrated with a wide range of external authentication servers like Active Directory, LDAP, LDAP Secure, Novel eDirectory, Apple Directory, TACAS, and Radius servers. XG can also integrate with API for external authentication. Over 95% of the Fortune 1000 organizations use the Microsoft Active Directory for their authentication purposes. So it's really important for us to understand how XG integrates with the Active Directory. XG can be integrated with multiple directory servers, so it can fail over to a secondary domain controller in case of a failure of a primary domain controller. One of the most common use cases of Active Directory integration is to implement the transparent single sign-on in your network. From an end user perspective, it's a transparent authentication experience. XG can also authenticate the remote or mobile users connected to your firewall using SSL VPN or IPsec clients to access your network resources. XG performs a tight integration with the Active Directory, which means every time XG sends a user authentication request, the directory server responds back with all the group memberships of the user, placing the user the same group they belong to on the Active Directory. From an admin perspective, this functionality saves a lot of time and effort to enforce the firewall policies such as web, application, IPS, and traffic shaping policies on the users. Now let's take a look at the configuration. In this video, I have a Windows 2012 R2 server with a sophos.local domain. You need to make a note of two parameters from the Active Directory. The NetBIOS domain in this example is Sophos, and the fully qualified domain name is sophos.local. Now let's log into a firewall and click on Authentication on the left side navigation bar, click on Server, click on Add a new server, and select Active Directory from the drop-down. You can name the server, and it's not necessary that it has to match the name of the domain controller. In this video, I'm going to call it DC1. Enter the server IP address. And the NetBIOS domain name mentioned here would be Sophos, and you need to enter the administrative username and password of the Active Directory. The display name attribute here is optional, but it's recommended to use display name as the attribute value here. The domain name is your FQDN. In this example, we're using sophos.local. You need to enter a search query. In our case, it is DC equals sophos, DC equals local. Now add the search query, test the connection, and you should be able to see the Active Directory connection with the firewall being successful. Now save the configuration. Now let's take a look at importing the groups and OUs from the Active Directory. In this video, we have a handful of security groups and OUs that will be imported to the XG firewall. You need to understand the XG will not be importing the users in the security groups. This is by design. The reason behind this being XG will auto-add the users into the local database upon the user's first authentication to the firewall. To import the selected groups and OUs, navigate to Authentication, Servers, click on the Import Group Wizard. This opens an Import Group Wizard on a new window. Click on Start. The search query you specified at the time of integrating with the Active Directory server is shown on the screen. Select the search query and click Next to continue. Select the OUs and groups that you wanted to import from the Active Directory and click Next to continue. Select and apply policies. Click Next to continue. Review your selected groups and changes on the XG and click Next and click OK. This will finish the import group process. Close the wizard and navigate to the Groups tab and verify your groups and OUs again. The next step involves pointing the XG towards the Active Directory for authentication. Navigate to Authentication, Services, and select the DC1 from the list of authentication servers. You can also change the precedence of the server, so XG will query the domain controller before looking into its own database for a user. Apply the changes. Now that we integrated the XG firewall with the Active Directory, let's verify if this is a successful integration. The easiest way to verify this is to use the Cap2 portal or network authentication page. To get to this page, you need to key in the firewall's IP address on https://8090. Let's go ahead and key in a couple of users from the Active Directory and see if it's successful. This is user 1. Let me log out and log in as a different user. Now let's log in back to your firewall and look at the users page and see if there were successful attempts. Ricky Ponting is the first user I attempted to log in. In this example, you can see he is part of the accounting group. Jason Roy is the second user I tried to log in from the Cap2 portal, and he's now part of the sales group. This verifies the successful integration of the XG firewall with the Active Directory. Now let's take a look at the firewall policies. To create a firewall policy, navigate to the firewall menu on the left side navigation bar, click on Add Firewall Rule, and select User/Network Rule. Firewall policy is the nerve center for the entire XG operating system. All the UTM modules are connected to the firewall policies in XG. In this video, I will create an outbound policy for my Active Directory groups. I will name this rule as Sales and Engineering. You can also add a description and select the rule position so XG can place a rule on top of the existing firewall policies. XG has a zone-based approach while we create the firewall policies. Source zone in this example is my trusted zone LAN. And source network is going to be either any, or I can select specific IP addresses in the LAN zone segment. I can also add scheduling to the firewall policies to make this firewall policy effective only at a certain time on a day. The destination zone in this example will be the WAN zone, which is my untrusted zone. The destination network is going to be any IP address on the internet. I can also restrict the services from any outbound service to just HTTP and HTTPS. So my users can only access the web outside and no other service apart from the web traffic. Identity-based policies allow you to create firewall policies embedding user identity into the firewall rule matching criteria. If I need the XG firewall to validate a user before allowing the traffic outbound from that specific user, I can check the match known users, wherein I can add one or more security groups or OUs into the firewall policy. In this example, I'm going to select Sales, Engineering, and Admin. Enable the malware scanning on this rule for HTTP and HTTPS. Enable Sandstorm for these groups. In the advanced, you can apply the IPS, web, and application policies to the selected users and groups. We have predefined templates out of the box on the Sophos XG appliance. So let's apply LAN to WAN general for the IPS, default workplace policy for the web filter, and block generally unwanted apps for the application control. Make sure you enable log firewall traffic and save the policy. From the administrative perspective, this is a unified policy management experience where all the modules are embedded into one firewall policy, making it easy to manage and deploy. Let's do a quick recap. In this video, we have seen integration with Microsoft Active Directory, import the user groups from the Active Directory, and enforce the firewall policies on the user groups. Hope this video is helpful. Thank you again for watching.